Hello and welcome to Building the Premier Accounting Firm. This is a podcast dedicated to helping individuals have a successful accounting, bookkeeping, and tax business. I'm your show host, Roger Knecht, president of Universal Accounting Center, and for more than 20 years, I've been working with accounting professionals to help them successfully start and build their accounting business. We cover topics on this podcast that range from marketing to sales, pricing strategies, a variety of things related to running the business profitably, and as well as onboarding clients, offering advisory services, working with the clients and improving client relations and retention, and most importantly, getting the referrals that I'm sure we all want. All of these discussions are done with experts that actually help you apply principles that you can effectively place within your business to, in fact, become the premier accounting firm in your area. I'm excited to have a special guest on the show today. This is going to be someone that I'm sure you're all going to love. This is someone that I think you're going to find very interesting. It's Lara Squires. Lara is the founder of Consortium. Since 2013, her team has grown to 7 as they work with clients across the United Kingdom, working with professional services such as accountants, bookkeepers, and such. Prior to setting up Consortium, Lara was a marketing and business development manager at a regional law firm for 8 years, where she was responsible for all things related to marketing. She is a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Marketing, and as a chartered marketer, Lara is a keen public speaker. Something that she's very proud of is a successful group of ladies' luncheon clubs that she's part of, where she's been working with them now for 16 years. So first of all, Lara, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Roger.
I've been quite impressed with some of the things that you've been doing regarding social media and marketing, and you obviously have a lot of insights to help people, particularly when it comes to such things as like LinkedIn. So we're going to have a conversation here today that I think everyone can really benefit from. Let me just kind of backtrack, though. The history that you have working in the professional service sector and getting involved with professionals, I'd like to kind of give a little bit of a background there. So what could you tell us about that?
So I suppose I kind of fell into the law. I decided I wanted to become a lawyer and then realized that I'm not a technician. So in practicing conveyancing, so residential or real estate, if you're in America, I realised that actually my skill set was more to the marketing of winning the business, which is how I moved into that within the regional law firm. And I think it's probably true for a lot of people that work in professional services. They tend to be technicians, which can mean that some of the softer skills come harder to them. So that's why I really wanted to help those sectors with the things that come easy to me, that come harder to them. And it's quite a nice marriage because I understand enough about what they do to be able to translate that into plain English for their customers, which is often something that they really struggle with.
Well, let's do just that. Let's put this into plain English. What is the layman's term for soft skills versus technical skills?
So marketing, so from our perspective, the marketing is the social media, the email communications. It's generally communication in general. So they might be really excellent at doing someone's books, doing the bookkeeping or doing the payroll or managing the tax side of things, but quite often the communication isn't great. So I know from my own experience with my own accountants that do my business accounts, they're very good technicians, but quite often I'd just like the communication to be better. So I'd like to feel that they're a bit more interested in me. And I do think that's something that's quite lacking in the sector as a whole. I mean, obviously other soft skills are things like HR, people management, things that I think they also get, and IT, they get external support for.
Yeah, so I like your description because it is helpful, because one of the things that I've learned over the years is in the accounting profession, a lot of times people are very good at the technical side of things. They can do the books, they can prepare the reports, they can analyze the data, and there's a lot of satisfaction, personal satisfaction that can come from doing that work and doing it well, where oftentimes it can be difficult and we may struggle as a profession are the soft skills. It's the communication, as you were describing, that not the technical doing the work, it's the getting out, networking, talking to business owners, communicating with them, helping them feel comfortable, helping them appreciate the services that we offer, helping them see us as experts, as someone that they should be working with. It's all those soft skills or communication skills. Someone once told me that it's the small talk, it's the conversational stuff that we sometimes struggle with, because there's this balance of how much do we share that's personal versus professional to get them to appreciate the services we provide. Yeah. So what you're describing is very helpful.
Thank you, Roger. You might like this one. I often say you need to channel your inner hairdresser. So you know how you go to the hairdressers and they just manage to talk about anything and everything. And there's never awkward silence. So it's thinking about it like that in your interaction with people. You don't need to talk about being an accountant or what you do as an accountant. It's more who you are as a person. So when we talk to people about what we do, we phrase it as we help our clients communicate better with their existing clients, because that's a really important part of it. It's not all about winning new business. It's also about keeping their existing business. So we help them communicate better with their existing clients whilst also raising their profile externally to help them win new business.
Perfect. So one of the things that I think would be important as we're having this conversation right now is to help the listeners realize that there is something to be said about the professional side of what we do. People like to know that we're experts, that we know what we're talking about.
Yes.
But Stephen Covey once made a comment that I think we are all familiar with today now, which is people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And so it's at that personal level that we get to know these clients or these potential clients, and they just want to know that they are in a safe space, that they can be vulnerable, that we can be open. And it's honestly here where we get to show some of our genuine interests, our interests in them, hobbies and things that we like to do. It's where we become vulnerable and share ourselves as people. So let's break this down. There's first of all this idea of getting social. What do you mean by that?
So we're all on social media now. You mentioned earlier LinkedIn, Roger, which everyone in the world seems to now be on, quite rightly. And you'll be able to see, if you are on there, some really clear examples of people doing it well. And maybe people doing it less well. You might not see the people doing it less well because it's not going to be high profile. But there are some really great examples of accountants and lawyers getting social. So they're sharing more than just their technical knowledge. So it's a bit about the technical knowledge, but also how that applies to life. And also I really like what you're saying, Roger, about vulnerability. And I think the people that do social media well are those that show that vulnerable side, because it's remembering, particularly in professional services, that people buy people. So you're a person first and an accountant second. So the whole buying process is know, trust and like. Somebody can't like you unless they know you. So you've got to kind of put a bit of yourself out there. So whether that is sharing that your hobby is golf, which means that's going to resonate with certain potential clients, or that you love raising money for a particular charity for a particular reason, putting that sort of thing out there is a really great way of utilizing your social media, and it's a way of being more social on your social media. So it's not just putting out technical content, which is what most people have accepted that they now need to do. So previously it was just radio silence from some accountancy firms. So now they appreciate they need to do something, but it tends to be quite dry, quite technical, and if I'm being a bit harsh, a bit boring. So it's about trying to make it interesting and putting yourself in the reader's shoes as to what they want to see from you.
So from a public relations standpoint, there's this principle of being controversial. There's this belief that there's no such thing as bad publicity. You talked about getting away from the boring and the technical. Should we be controversial as well?
It's like you've read my mind, Roger. In my LinkedIn training sessions that I run, I actually have a slide that talks about being controversial. there's a fine line. We probably all appreciate that accountants in the main are quite risk adverse individuals. So being controversial is not going to be something that comes easy necessarily. I think what's more important is to be of the moment. So if you are going to talk about remote working, if you're going to talk about flexible working, those sorts of things, and try and get insights from people about what they think and is it right and should we be on a 4-day week and questions like that. That's a way of being slightly controversial, because obviously some people will think that's a ridiculous idea and we should all be back in the office and working 5 days a week, but without being really controversial. So, you might want to steer away from the political things of saying that you love Donald Trump or saying that you love Boris Johnson, because that will possibly cause some division. But I think having interesting debates and conversations about time-sensitive things, things that are going on in the world right now. So one thing that's picked, or two things that are picked up a lot on social media, are the whole flexible and remote working conversations, and also in-person meetings. So there's a lot of chat around, should we be networking in person? Should we be having client meetings in person? And it is a controversial subject because people do tend to feel strongly one way or the other. And I think that's where being controversial comes in. Pick a subject where people feel relatively strongly one way or the other. Because the other nice thing that comes out of that is that if you find your tribe, basically, if you put things out. So for example, back in September, for me, it was too soon to go back to in-person networking, whereas quite a lot of people in my network wanted to and were doing it. So I clearly separated people that I knew into two camps. One were my tribe and one wasn't, because I just didn't see where they were coming from. And if you market to your tribe, they're so much more likely to buy from you because they agree with you. They understand where you're coming from. They know, think and believe the same sort of things. So it can be quite an interesting approach to take, this whole sort of challenging people's beliefs and seeing where they fit and whether they're a good fit for you and your company.
Now, there's something I think that's very important that we can be discussing about this topic of being controversial. And there's a difference between providing a platform or bringing up the topic and then also providing your personal take or opinion on it. In other words, you can actually, in the social world, ask the questions, moderate the discussion, but in truth, never be transparent as to which side you personally take, but yet you provided the opportunity for the discussion to be had. And I think that's very talented in the sense that, yes, you're becoming relevant. You're having actually content that is now getting traffic. It may be going viral, but at the end of the day, for someone that really pays attention, you never showed your side of the fence. You never really revealed your opinion on the matter other than you asked the question.
Yeah, really good point, Roger. I think you could absolutely do that. I have a tendency to be too much of an open book, probably. So I always start these things with, I think this, what does everybody else think? So I did one recently, for example, where I had a PA trying to organise a meeting with me, not my PA, a PA for somebody else that I wanted a meeting with. And I recognised that I was irrationally cross about it. I don't know why. I don't know why I was so cross about organising this meeting with a PA, but it did make me cross. And I just thought I would have been much happier if I was using an app like Calendly or one of those types of apps where I could have just booked it in myself, or to be dealing with the person direct. And I thought, well, I wonder if other people feel like this. So I did a LinkedIn poll saying, I think this. What does everyone else think? But you're absolutely right, Roger. The smarter person would probably have actually put, I hear lots of talk around whether you should use a software or a PA. What does everyone else think? Without actually putting my opinion out there. But I'm probably too opinionated to do that.
Well, I think what you're describing there is important, because a lot of people do start with, I think. And so that's where the conversation oftentimes begins. So let me change gears on you. I want to talk about networking. You've kind of alluded to this. You mentioned it as being a topic that you divided your tribe up with, if I could describe it that way. But there is this question between on or offline, like you mentioned. And what I wanted to do is ask, what are the benefits and the disadvantages of both? What are some of the advantages that come from meeting people face to face? And what are some of the advantages that come from meeting people online?
Great question. I love networking. I will get my little soapbox out and stand on it and talk about networking for ages. So let's deal with online networking first, because that's what we're mostly experiencing at the moment. So online networking done well is just brilliant because it's such a fantastic time saver. You haven't got to travel anywhere. It's often very well structured because it has to be. It's online. It needs to have a structure and an organization around it. It also, what's quite nice for the professional services industry is, though, and this is generalizing, but those types of people tend to be more introvert than extrovert, and online networking really suits the introvert because the structure's there for you. You don't have to go and break into a conversation. There's a process to follow. Everyone's following that same process. Everyone's in the same boat. And obviously what was great about last March, April, was that everybody was thrown into this not knowing what they were doing. So you weren't coming late to the party. So those people that embraced it early really, I think, have hopefully had a very good year worth of networking. Mm-hmm. Online will be here to stay. So all the groups that I run and the groups that my contacts run are doing a hybrid of some in person, some online. I know lots of people that will only do online because they've just loved it so much and that's how they want to do it. And I think it's about then looking at your process. So whereas you might have met someone in person through a networking event and then they've gone into your sales funnel, whatever that might be, with online, they might need a little bit more nurturing because you haven't met them in person. So it's looking at what your process is. And those people that are favouring online are still seeing people in person, but it's more on a one-to-one basis. And then looking at the in-person networking, again, brilliant. And on in-person networking can be really invigorating. It can give you energy. You can get ideas. Those sort of nonsense conversations that you have over a coffee that you probably wouldn't have had otherwise can be really valuable. The biggest downside, I think, with the physical networking is just the time it takes. I think because we've got quite used to not having to commute anywhere now and not have the travel time, I think it is going to be difficult for in-person event organisers to find a way to make it attractive enough for people to go back to doing that. But the biggest thing with both types of these events, whether you're networking online or offline, is the infrastructure around your networking. So the preparation before you go, making sure you've looked at who's going to be there and checked out who you're going to talk to, and then the time booked in your diary for post-event to do all your follow-up. And I think that's where a lot of people fall down with the networking in general, whether it's in person or online.
Oh, you ended on an excellent note. So before I tap into that, let me just kind of reiterate what you shared, that there are two distinct things going on, both in person and remote or online. And one of the things that really stood out to me about online is you emphasized a little bit more the agenda, that it's a little bit more purposeful, that when you're meeting online, it typically has a little bit more structure than when in person, there's a little bit more of a casualness to it, or at least it can turn to that and become a lot more relaxed. And then with regards to online, I do feel that the online has kind of a distance to it. We are humans, and for many individuals, the lack of touch or the need for touch is something that the remote doesn't provide. And so at some point, I think there is always going to be a time and a place for the in-person, but I think so well in the last year, we've found that we can be productive and effective online, and in doing so, save us the commute time that you were sharing a moment ago. But you ended on the last thing that I think is probably the more critical, which is the follow-up. Now that you've actually had the online or in-person meeting, where we tend to fall down is we don't have then the follow-up or the follow-through. You just met this person, you just had a great conversation, you've learned about them. Therefore, what? What's the next step? What's the action items that need to take place? How do you take that conversation to the next level and re-engage with that person at another level? So, you may have met them, but have you connected with them on LinkedIn? Have you actually now reached out to them through email? Have you sent them a text message? There's a variety of things that can be done to nurture that relationship now that the conversation is ended. So let's talk about giver's gain. That is a phrase that's used in BNI, Business Networking International. Giver's gain. What do you mean by that?
Well, it obviously, like you say, Roger, it is from BNI. And it's just remembering, I think it's an important reminder, particularly with the network, coming off the back of talking about networking, is you should be thinking about how you can help the person you're talking to before you go to the headspace of what's in this for me. Because it is really true. If you take the approach of helping others, it will come back. Maybe not instantly, but those people, if you think back over the last 6 months, who have you met, and who is memorable, it tends to be those people that are a bit selfless, the ones that help you without asking for anything in return. So if you can be one of those people, you will get back tenfold what you put out there. So it's to try and encourage people to think about how go to networking, particularly thinking about how you can help the people you interact with rather than I must come away with a piece of work. Because obviously with our networking, it's all about building relationships, and there's no better way to build a relationship than by helping somebody.
The way I've described it, and I think this is what you would agree with, is before the meeting begins, it's asking yourself, what do you want to come away from this conversation knowing or learning? And if you go in with giver's gains mentality, the first thing is I think genuinely and sincerely getting to know the other person. And it's spending time asking questions to listen. And as you learn about the other person, you'll find opportunities to now assist or give them. Where can I help you? Where it is that I can give to you? And if you can go in with the intent of, I'm going to pay attention and find some way that I can help this individual, find what they're needing or looking for and see if I can meet that need. If you go in with that intent and then actually experience that, find that opportunity to serve like that, the impression you make on the other individual is overwhelming because they didn't feel sold to, they didn't feel spoken to or spoken at. They felt listened and they felt understood. And so it's a different experience for them and perhaps much more memorable.
Yeah, definitely. It's a another phrase that's often used is you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. So you should listen twice to what you are speaking. So really hearing what the person is telling you, because like you say, Roger, if you listen, you will identify the opportunities of how you're going to potentially be able to sell to that person. Because if you let them talk, ask the right questions and listen to them, those opportunities will present themselves.
Good. Now, I'm going to break this off into a tangent here real quickly. And I think this is going to open up a nice little conversation. Part of what we're discussing here is obviously trying to get to know our potential customers, identify who they are. So I'd like to distinguish between marketing and sales. What would you define marketing as compared to sales as?
So that's a really interesting question. I actually got pulled up on this earlier because I was putting them in the same bucket, because I am a salesperson as well as a chartered marketer, and that is quite unusual. You tend to have people that are marketing and then people that are sales. So I'm trying to think what he said. So Marcus, this was a good description. Marketing is the lead generation and sales is the lead conversion.
Well said and concise. I like it. I would agree. Marketing is what are those efforts that you're involved in that allow you to meet new people, make new contacts. And once you've identified these potential customers, the marketing stage is over. So once you have the contact, their name, phone number, email, you know who they are, what business they're with, and they've been identified if this is a good contact. The next step is then to set them into the sales cycle or funnel to move them towards becoming a transaction and a customer. And what we're trying to do here is then nurture that relationship. But once the marketing has identified them, the marketing's over. It's now selling, and it's what can we do to nurture the relationship to the point that they're educated about our product and service? What can we do to help them see us as the expert? What can we do to get them to want to talk to us? And at that point, then offer the services and get the new client. So very distinct processes. And one of the things that we're looking at here is properly networking and properly selling what we do. So that takes me to the question of target audience. I think it's good to be deliberate and intentional. So tell me what you mean when you hear the phrase or say the phrase of target audience.
Well, sadly, I don't hear it often enough. So if I talk to any of my clients before they become clients and I ask who their target audience is, they'll often say everyone or anyone that needs us, which is just too broad. You can't be all things to all people. So what we like to do with all of our clients is kind of create some client avatars or prospective client avatars. So really breaking down what that customer looks like. So it might be Brian, who's run the family business for the last 15 years. He likes embracing technology, but really doesn't understand his numbers. That could be one of your client avatars if you were an accountancy practice that embraced technology, for example. So it's really understanding who you're looking to meet that would be a good fit for you and your business. And the importance of that's it kind of just goes across so many different levels. So from a marketing perspective, if you understand who your target client is, your communications will be targeted to that individual. So as and when Brian sees your social media, it will be talking about how your practice works with family businesses. It will be talking about how you use Xero, QuickBooks, whatever, to manage the accounts online. And it will speak to him because it's ticking his boxes because you understand who he is as a client. Whereas I think what a lot of professional service firms do is they'll talk about technology in one post because they understand that that's important to those clients that embrace technology. And then in a different post, they'll talk about family businesses. And then in another post, they'll talk about how they like working with corporates. And they just end up becoming nothing to anybody because it's just such a diluted message. So it's really understanding who their target clients are and not being, and I don't think accountants are as bad at this as lawyers, but lawyers will often say to me, oh, I want high net worth individuals. And I do genuinely wish I was given £1 every time someone said that to me because I would then be one of those high net worth individuals. But it just doesn't mean anything because actually, do you really want rich people? Because quite often rich people don't like spending money. So it's not a high net worth individual they want. What they want is somebody who appreciates what they do and is willing to pay the appropriate fees for what they do. So it's really spending some time, and this is so important if any of the people listening are at the beginning of their journey, or even if they're halfway through or well into running a practice and have marketing in place, really sit down and look at who the client is. And you can often start with who the current clients are, and what that can further help you with is identify the clients that you've got that you possibly shouldn't have. Because if you identify that actually you want Brians who are these family businesses that embrace technology, but it turns out you've got a lot of Trevors who hate technology and want to pay you the minimum amount possible, and they're the people that bring you their tax returns at the last possible minute, you need to be looking at those clients and actually potentially moving them on so that you've got more space for the Bryans.
I like it. There are a few terms that you used in that description that I'd like to just quickly go over for the listeners. You've got target audience, which you've definitely defined. In that, you spoke of avatar. Some of the other things that are typically used in this discussion would be the words ideal client or even niche. And so let me just kind of real quickly identify these and then see if there's anything more you'd add. Sure. Typically with your avatar, it's a made up description of your ideal client. And what you're doing is you're basically looking either at your current client list and trying to see what are the things that have really worked well in your business that you'd like to find more of, and you're defining these. And then at the same time, you're also doing kind of a wish list. And in that, you're trying to not just get demographic information. My ideal client, my target audience is a business owner of a business that makes, say, $1 million or more in revenue, that has 5 employees. But you're getting down to even demographic questions of they're this age, they like golf, they are this gender, they live in this town or in this geography. And you're getting down into interests and things that you can maybe use to better connect with them. And sometimes part of this discussion is that niche element. They're in this certain industry and they are this stage of business. the more defined you can be, just like you were describing earlier in your messaging, you can talk to those specific demographics, those specific descriptions, and that becomes your target audience. So I think what you did there is a very well explanation of being deliberate in the messaging that we're using so as to resonate with the people that we want to connect with.
Yeah, exactly that, Roger. And I think as well, it's if you're clear about who you're targeting, because this links into everything else that we're doing. So if you did create an avatar and you had a nice little graphic of Brian with a little cartoon picture of him being in his 40s and his picture of his family business, then when your network sees that online, they understand that you want to meet Brian's, so that they can then help you with that. And likewise with the networking, if you've helped somebody, they're often going to say to you, so who would you like to meet?
Mm-hmm.
How can I help you?
Yeah.
And if you turn around and go, oh, well, anyone that runs a business, really, it's just too broad.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you say, I specialize in working with family run businesses that like technology or embrace technology, then suddenly that person you're talking to is going to know a Brian, and they're going to be able to say, oh, actually, I've got somebody that fits that bill. I might be able to introduce them to you. Now, they would have had that person, even if you said, I can help anyone with anything, but they wouldn't have been able to join the dots because they're not going to introduce you to everybody they know. But if you manage to explain it in that level of detail, the person that's going to become the introducer for you will see a value in introducing you. It's one of the, I mean, it was accidental why we went into professional services, because that was my background. But because we specialize, we get introductions to lawyers and to accountants to help them with their marketing, because people know that is what we do. And yes, it means that I can't go and help the lovely new patisserie that's opened up down the street. I could, in theory I could, I'm a marketer, but that's not what I do. There's somebody else better placed to do that. So it does mean you're going to be saying no to things, but what you'll end up with is a much better business focusing on what you're good at.
Yeah. So when you brought this up, there's a very important word that I think is a needed word, and it's the idea of triggers. And so when you talk too broadly, I work with business owners, and the person that you may be communicating with, they know business owners, but nobody really stands out. It's too ambiguous. And so what we want is these triggers to say, well, I work with typically owners of businesses that are maybe second generation, that have a family business that they've now kind of stepped into the role of running the company. They're in their, let's say they're in their 30s or 40s. It's typically a business owner that's up in this area of the country in this certain industry who likes to golf. And that person, because of some of those triggers, goes, I think you just described Brian. I need to introduce you to Brian. And at first, just the general term of I work with business owners, I do accounting, doesn't trigger anyone. But all of a sudden, because of the description you provided, it's like, well, I know someone that's exactly like that. And that's what we're trying to do, is help with that thought process so that we're assisting those people that we're talking to for them to identify who they should be introducing us to. So I liked how you did that. That was well done. So I've got another question for you. Obviously, we're talking to accounting professionals. That's who listens to the podcast. What should accountants be doing to be marketing themselves more effectively?
Well, Roger, in a lot of cases, it's just marketing full stop. There are still a lot of practices that aren't marketing, and it's a really interesting concept because they're busy. The last year they've been really busy. They might not have been particularly profitable because obviously a lot of their clients have needed stuff they might not be willing to pay for, and some of their clients might have gone out of business, but they've been busy, so they don't necessarily see the point of marketing until it's too late. They want to do it when they need the work, by which point, in my opinion, it's too late. You should always be marketing. So number one, do something, and have a strategy. I think a lot of the time accountants are really good at telling their clients what they should do. And I'm sure they tell all their clients they should have a business strategy and a marketing strategy. And yet they probably or possibly haven't done that for themselves. And I would say do one thing well. There are so many marketing tactics that you can do. And I think what I've seen quite a few businesses recently do this that have started marketing. They try and do everything all at once, and then they do none of it very well. Mm-hmm. It's a bit like being all things to all people and ending up being nothing to no one.
Yes.
Just take your time, is not going to happen overnight, which this then feeds into the whole, you can't do marketing when you need the work because it does take time. But if you start off with, for example, social media, that could be your first 3 months of a year, really focusing on your social media, working out your messaging, getting an audience, building your tribe, and crafting some really great communications. That then just continues in the background, and your second 3 months or your second quarter might be focusing on email communications and really getting that worked on, and your client data, and making sure that they're updated about everything that they need to be updated about. So I think build it in chunks so that you don't overwhelm yourself with trying to do everything all at once. And this is the thing the accountants will probably be quite good at, is measure and evaluate it. So just because something has always worked for the last 3 years doesn't mean it's going to continue working for the next 3 years. And equally, just because something didn't work last time you tried it doesn't mean it won't work this time. And I think a bit like with everything, seek advice. Your experts at the money and the finances, find somebody that's an expert at communicating, so that they can help you with that, because it is just such a vital part of business, is communicating with your clients and your prospects.
Yeah. Well, I think just the baby steps that you were describing, doing this in manageable chunks is important. And then you brought up the ROI. Are you seeing the results that you expected from those efforts after a period of time? So those are two good things. So here's the question that I think everyone would want to ask is, what's the biggest challenge or threat that you see the accounting profession facing when it comes to marketing in this light?
Well, I think it really is that sort of apathy of not doing anything. We've definitely seen, obviously, over the last few years, the move to things being automated, having systems like Xero, Sage, etc., and QuickBooks, etc. And I don't feel like the sector has kept up with what customers need. So we need to move away from being the numbers people to being the advisors. And this has been talked about a lot over the last few years. And accountants are like, yeah, we're more than the numbers. We're more than accountants. You see lots of those sort of terms being thrown around. But when you actually scratch the surface, they're not delivering anything different to what they've always delivered. So I think the biggest threat is sort of stagnation and doing what they've always done. I think if the last year's shown us anything, is that we are really adaptable. We do need to evolve and move forward. So the biggest risk, I think, is that we go back to doing what we always did at the beginning of 2020. This has shown us the last year you can work from anywhere. Your clients can work from anywhere. Your team can work from anywhere. So I think we really need to embrace that and create our own new normal by listening to what the customers want. And I don't think that's happening enough. That's, for me, that's the biggest threat to the industry.
Perfect. Now I'm going to break away here quickly just to mention two things that everyone needs to be aware of and come back to this conversation. But the first is our sponsors, and let everyone know that Lara has been generous to offer in the podcast episode description an opportunity to actually speak with her and have a Zoom call where she'll actually speak with you regarding your services and what it is that you're doing in your business from a marketing perspective, and have a free hour consultation with Lara. So I would encourage you to take advantage of going to the episode description and doing just that, scheduling a time to speak with her. The other happens to be an offer by Universal Accounting Center. Here it's being basically that of becoming a profit and growth expert. Lara just mentioned the importance of getting more into advisory type services and doing more than just the compliant work. And for that reason, we invite you to find out more what you can become or do to become a profit and growth expert. Doing so allows you to more effectively market and position yourself, in fact, as that unique individual in the space that can help them prioritize not just generating more revenue and being profitable, but obviously running their businesses with purpose and intent. So with that in mind, check out what you can do to find out more about becoming a profit and growth expert in your area. And then the second happens to be that of the Universal CRM. A lot of what we're discussing today is effectively marketing and nurturing the leads that we get through the process of actually becoming clients. And for that reason alone, you want to look at a CRM, a client retention management system that's specifically designed for the accounting professional to help them not only manage the contacts that you're getting, but more importantly, now nurture them to the point of becoming clients. Find out more about the Universal CRM, and in doing so, take and proactively market your services. So, Lara, one of the things that I think is interesting is you're not an accountant, but yet you work with accounting professionals. So I'm curious, what are some of the trends you're seeing from your perspective that are going on in the accounting profession that we should be aware of?
It's an interesting one because obviously we see what our clients are doing. So I think, like I mentioned at the beginning, there is definitely a move with with some of the accountants to be more personal. So to get some of their sort of personal messaging out there, share some of their backstory, and I think that's a really positive thing. Sort of humanizing the people behind quite a technical sector. So I think that's. That is the way it needs to go. And if you're in a practice that's got quite a generational split and the more senior members of the team aren't comfortable with that, then I think you need to embrace the more junior members and maybe allow them to take that approach, because I think that is what people will want going forwards, is to know, the people behind the business.
Very good. And if there's one thing that they should be doing, what is that?
Well, I like that you mentioned CRM, because they should have a CRM, and actually across all of the financial services, legal and accountancy, the CRMs are shocking. The data's shocking. They don't. So how can you communicate with your clients if you don't have the information there to communicate with them? So actually, I might jump on your bandwagon a little bit, Roger, and say you should have a CRM system.
Well, for that, you then need to go to the episode description and find out more about the Universal CRM. So that's well said. So, Lara, I'm going to do two things here. I'm going to ask you a question about freedom. What does the word freedom mean to you?
Ooh, fun. I think freedom means fun to me.
I like that. And what would you say with the idea of thankfulness? What are you thankful for?
Health and family.
Very good. I like that. So here's what I'd like to do. I'm going to just do a quick wrap up and summary of our conversation that Lara and I have just had. And I'm going to come back to Lara and ask for her closing thought. But before I do so, I am going to remind you and invite you again to go to the episode description and find out more about her offer to actually meet with you and do a free consultation regarding your marketing efforts, as well as find out more about a way of better managing your leads and the contacts you have with the Universal CRM. See what it is you can do to leverage technology to help you more effectively manage the contacts that you have and move them towards becoming clients of your own, seeing you as an expert, offering the quality services that they're in need of. And then lastly, it's this idea of becoming a profit and growth expert. It's literally transitioning from offering quality accounting services into also offering advisory and coaching services that your clients will be more than happy to pay more for, and obviously see you as the expert that you are as you're helping your clients run their businesses more profitably. So with that in mind, check out the episode description for those details. Now, as a recap for the conversation today, I think it's very timely. Obviously, we are all running our businesses, and we need to not forget the need to better market our services and find ways to do so. And what Lara has definitely described is the need to become clear as to who our target audience is and some of the mediums that we can use to then engage with them. And we talked about one of the things that I think is a possible thing, and it's being willing to at least be conversational, if not confrontational, so as to open up some of the dialogues and conversations that allow us to really get at the heart of a number of the matters that are out there and really, if anything, connect with our audience. The other thing that I think was also important is she was very clear as to not being afraid of going out and doing this. A lot of people are actually busy perhaps, or justifying not knowing where to start, and that just can't be an excuse. We need to be doing a better job of leveraging the social media and so forth. She spoke of emails, for example, so as to basically take the people that we're connecting with, nurturing them, and getting them to the point of becoming potential clients. Now, one of the things that I also wanted to just emphasize is Lara, as an expert, has given us some great advice as accounting professionals to really see that there are a number of ways that we can market our business and effectively go out there and get clients, grow the client base that we have. And I encourage you to actually take her challenge and see what more you can be doing to connect with your target audience, to build your tribe and get a following and actually connect with the people that you're now actually communicating with at a deeper level so that they can see you not just as a professional, but also as a person with whom they can trust. So with that being said, Lara, do you have a closing thought that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think recapping what you just have, Roger, would show that we need to spend time working on our business as well as in our business. So, allow an hour a week to work on your business instead of in it as a minimum. I mean, ideally we'd be looking a day a week, but to have that time and that headspace to be thinking about how you could do things better.
Perfect. And thank you for that. So with that being said, I invite everybody here to listen to our other episodes and see what other insights you can have to actually have the premier accounting firm in your area, as well as subscribe to this podcast and get notifications as to when the new episodes are released. I also want to remind you that if you'd like to find out more about how you can apply these principles in your business, you can visit us at universalaccountingschool.com. Or you can give us a phone call at 801-265-3777. And with that, always remember this: if it's about accounting, it is universal. Why? Because accounting success is universal. Take care, have a great day, and enjoy the great outdoors.